These are Copilot Notebooks, and when used right, they are one of the most powerful AI tools to use at work. But most people try it once, they get basic results, and they immediately dismiss it as just another chat interface. But that's a big mistake. I'm a senior product manager at a Fortune 500 company where being efficient with your workload is critical for success in your role. And for the last 3 months, I've been testing different use cases with notebooks to handle my workload much faster. And today I'll show you the 4 most effective ones so you can start using them right away, including some small instructions in workflow number 4 that completely changes the outcome of Copilot. Before I dive into the first use case, let me explain why notebooks are such a powerful tool. As opposed to your regular chat interface, notebooks don't throw back generic answers to you, but instead they work with the sources that you upload to them. So that means that the model is pulling answers from your presentations, your spreadsheets, and all your content that you uploaded, rather than from random sources of the internet. And this ensures a reduction in hallucinations, which is critical when you're working in a professional environment like I do. And the best part is that because it can analyze multiple documents at once, Copilot can connect the dots between different sources much faster than you could ever do manually. And essentially, it's like having a sharp analyst who never gets tired and is continuously crawling through all your sources. Alright, so let me show you a use case that I've been loving so far. Right now, I'm already in Copilot, and here on the left side you can find notebooks. Now the first thing is creating a new Copilot notebook and giving it a name. I will call this one Product Research Library, and I'll simulate I'm a product manager at JBL. So as you can see, we have here several consumer researches about some new noise cancelling headphones being developed, which I will load into the notebook. I'm also going to load the presentation that has the specs of the current headphones in the market and the new headphones we are working on. And last but not least, an Excel file where I have a detailed analysis of the reviews left on Amazon for the current headphones, which by the way, I also did in Copilot. So if you want to see how I did it, let me know in the comments and I can make another video about that. Alright, and it will take a bit, but now all of these are already loaded into the notebook. And of course, you can always add new sources if you need to, or you can also remove them later on if those are not relevant anymore. And now the first thing we can do here is go to the chat and ask it a question. For example, this one. Based on all the product researches and our new product specs, what are the 5 messaging options that would resonate the most with our target audience? And you can see how after a bit of thinking, it shows me here 5 messaging options that could resonate with my target audience. For example, charge once and listen all week. Or for example, 10 minutes charge equals 4 hours of playback. And it also explains why it works. So this fast charging claim received 88% appeal in one of the claims tests we've done, and also resonance, so it's perfect for commuters and professionals who have busy lifestyles, and it delivers instant value and convenience. And because I added a source including consumer reviews that I pulled from Amazon, I can even ask Copilot something like, what are the top 3 customer complaints that our new product directly addresses and I could emphasize in my communications? And again, if I prompt it and wait for a few seconds, Copilot is thinking for a bit and it just comes in a moment with the answer, highlighting what are the top 3 customer complaints that the new JBL Fusion 500 directly addresses. And by the way, these are names that I purely made up. I do not work for JBL, but what I want to teach here is what is the workflow that you can use in your actual job. Now you can see it quickly identified that we're addressing the poor battery life, we are addressing the discomfort during the long listening sessions, and we are also addressing the frustrating multi-device connectivity. And of course, when you're in a corporate environment, you want to make sure that any decision you take is underpinned by actual data. And that's a nice thing of notebooks because you can see behind every statement, Copilot is clearly citing the source. So in this case, for example, this came from the Amazon review source, or this, for example, came from this research of 2025. And you can always see here on the right what are the sources that have been used for this answer. And you can also ask specific questions about the source. So if you would like to, you could go to this source and just say, hey, list the key points, or ask a specific question about this. Or if you want to see in detail for yourself, you can also just click on it and it will immediately open for you the source. So you can also double check that whatever the notebook came up with is actually correct. Now, of course, without notebooks, I can also go myself through all these sources and draw my own conclusions, but that's a very manual task that requires a lot of time. And as a product manager, I don't always have it. So this really helps me speed up this step. And especially when I need to refer to very old researches from like 2 or 3 years ago that I don't always have the data in my head, this really helps to quickly surface that data again so I can easily draw my own conclusions and make suggestions to my stakeholders. Now this is already nice on its own, but it does get better because I have another workflow that will make you the go-to person in your company for anything related to developments in your industry. So I have a notebook here called Market Insider, where I added as sources all sorts of reports on recent trends in the audio industry. And what's cool about notebooks is that you can use files as sources but also links. So for example, let's say I found a nice relevant article online on something happening in this industry. I can easily load it as a source to Copilot by going to add reference, then link, then give a name to the link, and paste the URL. And having all these sources at once in the notebook allows me to ask questions like, what are the emerging trends that could disrupt our business model in the 18 months? Which market segments are showing the fastest growth according to my reports? What are the external factors that pose the biggest risk to the growth of our industry? And in just a matter of seconds, you can see how Copilot is coming up with answers for each of these questions. And again, of course, I could do this also myself and go through all of these reports myself in detail. But let's be honest, some of these reports are really long. They can even be sometimes hundreds of pages long. So having the notebook, going through it and making sense of all the data in there, it's a massive time saver. And as always, if you're going to take an important decision based on this data, make sure to double check the source by clicking the link that you see in the chat. Because even though notebooks have a much lower hallucination rate, it can still happen, so it's always good to double check. Now you can level this up by clicking Get Audio Overview, and Copilot will generate a podcast summarizing in a more engaging way the content of your sources.
This report doesn't just cover what is coming in artificial intelligence or next-generation engineering, but examines how digital trust, data, connectivity, and sector-specific advancements all intersect.
And yes, it does sound a bit artificial and you probably want to speed it up, but I do find it a very useful way to go through all the information. Like for example, if you would have a very long McKinsey PDF, you could just upload it as a source, ask it to generate an audio, and then listen to it on your way to work. Now let's move to another workflow that has also been a game changer for me. Here's the problem. Every large organization has a ton of guidelines for many different processes, and it always ends up with employees asking themselves questions like, where do I find the latest brand guidelines? Or how do I request budget for a new project? Or what's our policy for international travel? And usually the answers to these questions are scattered across files that you can find in all sorts of different touch points, which means that when you personally have such questions, you end up wasting a lot of time trying to remember where can you find that document and searching these SharePoints, email, or whatever until you find the document with the guidelines and you find your answer. But the cool thing is that with notebooks, you can centralize all that information into one single place that you can use pretty much as an FAQ to answer any of these questions. So for example, I created this notebook called Master FAQ where I uploaded our onboarding materials, process documents, policy PDFs, and all other sort of sources. And once this is set up, you can just go to the notebook and simply ask, for example, what are the brand guidelines regarding use of our logo in external presentations? And in just a few seconds, you can clearly see here what are the guidelines that we have in our company about using the logo in external presentations. And for example, I can also ask, how can I get my colleague access to the analytics dashboard tool? And in just a few seconds, Copilot will surface that answer, pulling directly from the uploaded sources. And basically, this is almost like having a help desk 24/7 ready to interact with you with insane speed in digging that information for you. Finally, there's one more feature I want to show you, and for it, I have this notebook called Performance Review, where I have uploaded all sorts of sources, like a file with my goal setting, a 360 assessment review from my peers, my quarterly performance review meeting minutes, and a file I have where every Friday I'm adding the key achievements of that week. And this is also something that Copilot can help you with, by the way. And from here, I could now prompt something like this. Draft my self-assessment highlighting my top 5 achievements from this year that demonstrate readiness for the next level. And after a few seconds, you can see it's already giving me a decent answer, but let's be honest, as it is, it's not fully usable yet. But there is a way we can level this up. You might already be familiar with the concept of custom instructions, which essentially is a way of telling Copilot how you want it to respond. You can think of it as a way to set rules for Copilot to always give you answers matching your tone, your style, or any framework that you are used to using. And the good thing is that Copilot can take custom instructions that are specific to every notebook. Let me show you. What you want to do is go here to Add Copilot Instructions, which will open this window, and here you can add instructions on how Copilot should give you the answer. Like for example, what I have on screen right now, where you can see a set of detailed instructions on which tone should Copilot use, what kind of verbs to use, and for example, when it's highlighting achievements, what should be the right method to use. So for example, in this case, I really like to use the STAR method, so start with a situation, task, action, and result, and making sure that the outcome it shows is measurable and quantifiable. And then Copilot will take into account these instructions every time it gives you an answer in this notebook. Now, if I repeat the same prompt as before, look at how much better the output is. You can see that using custom instructions definitely paid off because now it's formatted much better using the STAR method that I suggested. Everything is measurable and quantifiable, and also the tone of voice is way more confident. These were my 4 favorite use cases for Copilot Notebooks, but I have many more to share. So if you would like to see more content like this, please let me know in the comments below. I read them all. And in the meantime, you can check this video over here about prompting in Copilot. I'll see you over there.